We got an email, I think last week, someone recently, that sparked a conversation, a short one, but I thought it would be a very nice thing to talk about. One of our friends and supporters wrote and said, "I've just read the 2015 annual report of Sravasti Abbey. I thank you very much for reading it. I rejoice mightily in all of your virtuous Dharma-related activities." But then, he said, I read in this caption under a photo, generous donors include the Hershey Family Foundation. Seeing this has caused confusion to arise. On the one hand, how wonderful and beneficial for sentient beings that such funds might be karmically laundered in this way. On the other hand, at this very moment, Hershey and the other leading chocolatiers continue to rape Western Africa, both metaphorically and generally, as well as literally and specifically, concealing their corporate activities which involve each of the 10 non-virtuous activities. So I really appreciated this email. I was happy to say, and happy to be able to write back immediately and say, this Hershey Family Foundation is not connected to the Hershey's chocolate factory people. It's a completely different fund stream, and in fact, the Hershey Family Foundation has been supporting Dharma activities. They were students of Lama Yeshe years ago and support the Wisdom publications, supporting His Holiness's work as well as education and the arts. So I was happy to respond in that way. But I was also very happy that he raised the question. So what I wanted to talk about was the importance of raising those kinds of questions in that special relationship between the lay community and the Sangha community. That yeah. So what is right livelihood for monastics? It raises that question. And very clearly, sometimes, not very often it has happened, but a couple of times we have not accepted a donation from some source for different reasons. So it is something we're aware of. The Buddha was very clear in the Vinaya and the sutras about the ethics for how the Sangha is to be supported, and then also how we use those resources as we're supported. For example, one of the things that the Buddha outlined, and this was in the context of ancient India, is that monastics don't till the land. Monastics don't handle money, don't buy and sell things in order to live, but live on offerings that are given to us. Of course, there's the right, the 5 wrong livelihoods, so that we avoid receiving offerings through flattery, through hinting, through coercion, through giving a large gift in the hopes, or a small gift in the hopes that someone will give a big gift in return. And also, since I'm on camera, I just forgot the last one. Oh, being hypocritical. Presenting ourselves as something different than what we are, a better practitioner than we are, in the hopes of inspiring benefactors to give more for higher realizations and so forth. These were, so as the Buddha gave all these guidelines for the way the Sangha is to be supported within the context of the ancient Indian culture. So an agrarian society where people actually made their living as farmers and things like that, for the monastics to be raising their own food would actually be taking away from the economy of the society. So as Buddhism spread to different locations, different cultures, different climates, it's not that the Vinaya guidelines were changed, but sometimes they have to be adapted or practiced in a different way to suit the situation. And so this also happens in the world today. It's remarkable that over the last almost 2,600 years, the Vinayas are all the same, and you'll find monastic communities living pretty much exactly the same. But each major tradition will hold these precepts differently, and each monastic community will hold them somewhat differently. For example, this one about tilling the land, when the Buddhism went to China, during a period of Chinese history when the Chinese monastics did not want to be influenced by all the political machinations of the government, they moved way, way, way out into the countryside for some privacy. So they could no longer do alms rounds and so forth. And so growing their own food became a necessity to preserve the other aspects of monastic life, right? So here we also have gardens, partly because when Venerable was just starting to talk about the Abbey, in the very beginning, people would say, oh, do you grow your own food? Because it's a value here in our culture, in our country. Oh, you're contributing to your own livelihood by also having gardens here. When we have lay residents who can take care of that, that's who does most of the, at least the digging in the earth part. When we don't, then we do our best not to dig in the earth, and we tend the gardens in that way. But it makes a significant contribution for our summer support. So the way I'm laying all this out like this to say that there is a spirit of the Vinaya and the way things are held. There is a way of living the Vinaya that, well, as Venerable says, all Buddhists love the Dharma and are doing their best to practice and preserve it. That's her quote. Within that, then, the relationship between the lay community and the monastic community, questioning when things don't look right, is absolutely appropriate and a good thing to do. Another situation where a question came up, it's slightly different, but it's, to me, in the same vein. A few years ago, I went to a Dharma center somewhere else in the US to do some talks. And we were doing planning to do a Vajrasattva retreat over New Year's. I got a letter back from one of the organizers apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry to have to ask you this, but the people in charge of us want to make sure that you have the initiation, and I'm sure you do, and, you know, very apologetic about it. And I wrote back and said, I think it's great that they ask. That means they're caring for you. They're checking to make sure that the person who's going to be giving this has a qualification to lead you in this practice. It's a great thing to question. It's not an offense at all. And I also, in that vein, was thinking of a situation I knew of in Singapore where there was a monastic in a very high position who I think I don't know him at all, but was handling a lot of money in a way that ended up not being so clear. And so the ethics were very much in question. And he was pretty publicly censured for that. And I wonder if people had questioned when they first started to see that it didn't look right, if that would have helped him a lot and maybe helped the situation. That's my suspicion. So the way the Buddhist precepts actually, or the monastic precepts, were developed often was that the lay people would see the monastics doing something that didn't look right, and they would complain to the Buddha, and then the Buddha would make a precept about it. So that time has passed. The Buddha is no longer here in that form giving precepts. But when we see ethical questions, like one of the things Venerable Chödrön raises quite clearly is how monastics or big temples use styrofoam cups. You know, this is something to really question and doubt because of the impact on the environment in such a negative way. I don't know whether her questioning has changed habits. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. But in those arenas where we're questioning, does this really fit within the monastic guidelines? It's good to ask the questions. Hopefully, you know, a clear answer can be given, as in the case of the Hershey Family Foundation, that is satisfying to the mind of the questioner. But if the mind of the questioner is disturbed about the behavior of the Sangha, or the practices or the principles of the Sangha, sooner or later that will have the capacity, I think, to undermine your faith in the Dharma. It could. So ask the question before it becomes a big issue. I want to underscore that does not mean every time you see somebody eating dinner that you know, that we pick. Because I've also seen this with communities and sanghas, to really pick at the details of the Vinaya and why are they not doing this and why are they not doing this. It's not a question of correcting. It's not a question of yeah, I mean, we in good faith, as Venerable says, all Buddhists love the Dharma, are doing their best to practice. So we need some faith in that. But she says, reviewing previous decisions and asking questions prevent us from becoming complacent or smug. So I just want to encourage that. If there are other questions about ethics, and also to remind us too, if those questions come, that it is from genuinely a place of people wanting to know and needing the reassurance that, yeah, that we are keeping our precepts, or we are holding it within the guidelines of how the Buddha asked the Sangha to function. And if they're not, then we need to know that too. So I thank again the writer for the question, and we all really serve one another, lay, Sangha, because we all have the same goal, to reach Buddhahood as quickly as we can.